Someone contacted me earlier today with two questions. Now, we've made a sheet that wraps under before, but the question was, how do you make a comforter or a duvet that drapes over the sides of the bed? Something like this. Okay. And the second question they asked was, how do I put piping around my pillows? Well, after doing this, I wasn't about to model yet more pillows. I'm sick of them, to be honest with you. So I added some piping to the comforter, like this. Okay, exactly the same process. So we'll just combine it onto the one object. Um, so how do we do this? Well, let me delete these couple of items. Let's select the piping. Let's select the comforter and delete it. And so we're left with just a bare mattress type of thing, or the sheets that you made, or whatever. I mean, if you made sheets, obviously you want the comforter above the sheets. So you'd use a sheet rather than the mattress. But anyway, the way to do this, what we need to do is, it's along similar lines. We need to add a cloth and do a cloth simulation. Okay, but where the comforter folded over on itself needs something a little bit extra. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a NURB surface. So Shift A and a NURB surface. Okay, if I go into edit mode, let me see, it's this surface. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make the endpoints active, so the surface actually comes to the very end of the control points, like so. Okay, let's lift the whole lot up. Well, let's do that in object mode actually. Let's lift the whole lot up above the bed a bit so it's easier to work on. Right, so if I go into, it's actually a side view, but that's okay. I was going to say front view. If I go into a side view and I select all my surfaces and I want to make this surface, all my control points, and I want to make this surface flat, so I'll simply scale on the z-axis to 0. So I've got this flat NURBS surface. I'm going to add some screencast keys here. Just going to pause a second while I set this up. Okay, that's done. So you can see my keystrokes up here as I do stuff, for example. Okay. Right, so I've got this NURBS surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go first of all into a top view, and I'm going to pull this down. Actually, I'm going to do this in object mode again. I'm going to pull this down over my bed more to where I want it. Okay, now the fold is going to be here where it folds over, so I'm leaving enough room up here for the pillows and what have you. So okay, I've got this, the folds on a positive X. So if I go into the side view, making sure I'm in ortho, and then I go to edit, I'm going to select these control points on the end. Okay, and I'm going to extrude them up a bit, and I'm going to extrude them backwards a bit to create that fold. Okay, now we can't see what's going on with the actual surface, so to see that I'm going to add a solidify modifier. Okay, so now we can see how this is behaving. If I add a little more thickness to it, there you go. You can see how this is behaving. So we've created this kind of folded over surface here, which is great. Okay, I'm going to go into a top view here, and I'm going to go into a wireframe. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I want to see how much over this duvet is, so how much it's going to fold over, shall we say. So I probably want it a bit more on the X. This is purely personal taste, so we're getting that there. I'm looking how central it is as well, and I want it a bit more on the Y. I want to kind of even this gap up. So SY, that's yeah, that's looking okay to me. So I can come back into a solid view. Right. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to bring this down to near enough the top of the mattress. Alright, so I don't want it touching because I need it to fall a little bit, but I don't want it up here where it's all going to fall horribly. Right, okay. Let me get rid of this solidify modifier. Okay, I've got backface culling on, so this looks a bit odd. But you can see how it folds over. Once we finish this, this will be double-sided. Right, so we've got this. The thing to do now would be to... which way do this? We'll convert this to a mesh. No, we won't. We'll add a subsurface division. Or subdivision surface, rather. One subdivision is going to be fine. Okay. Right, now I can make this a cloth. So I'm going to come across my physics tab here. It's still a surface, so I'm not getting all the options here. So Alt-C and turn it into a mesh. Now we're getting this as a cloth. Right, if I tab into edit mode here, I'm getting fairly regular squares. It should work. Okay, especially since I've got a subdivision surface on it. Right, so we make this a cloth. Now, I find for a duvet, because the duvet is thicker and it's got that bit of volume, you want a heavier material. So something like denim or leather should work. I'm going to leave it on denim. Okay. We're going to want some self-collision on this. Okay. Now the other thing we're looking at is when this folds down, we don't want the bottom surface poking up through the top. Okay, and we control that with the distance in the self-collision. Now 0.75 is probably a bit high. I'm going to turn that down to about 0.6. Okay, and what we can do here now is we can make the mattress a collision. We can come back and we can run a cloth sim on this and see how it's looking and see if we need to change anything. So I'm going to open up a timeline, which is there. I'm going to reset it to frame 0 or frame 1, and let's run this simulation and see what happens. Okay, so it's... Whoa. I thought I set the mattress as a collision. I didn't. Okay. Alright, so let's run this and see what happens. Okay, it's actually working fairly quickly. But we've got a couple of things going on here. One, this is dragging off the bed. And second, we are getting some poke through here. This poke through is probably not going to be very important, but we want to stop this dragging. Okay, so let's go back to frame 0. And the way we stop that dragging is to increase the friction in the collision. Okay, so let's try 10. Okay, and run this again. Okay, that's looking a bit better. It's not dragging and it is falling and forming. Now, when we was talking before about the distance, that is this distance here is the distance between the two surfaces, the two sets of vertices or vertices. How far apart this keeps them. It's obviously not working too well over here, but this isn't going to be critical. However, I do want to close this gap up a bit, so I'm going to bring this down to let's try 0.4, see what happens. Or 0.4. It won't go lower than 0.4. Okay, well let's leave it at 0.5, which seems to be the lowest. Let's bring this back up. And let's run this again. Okay, that actually folded pretty nice there on the way down. and I think I'm happy with that. So I'm just going to scrub back to about there. That looked pretty good to me. Alright, I know we've still got a big gap here, but we're going to fix that in a minute. So I'm liking that. It's, you know, it's like a heavy duvet. It's got some volume. It's not going to follow the mattress completely. It will come down at an angle. It's a shape I like. So I think what I'll do there is I'll come across my modifiers tab and I'll apply the cloth modifier. Right. So now we go into edit mode. We can see our geometry is there. It's the way we wanted it. Right. So as we said, a duvet or a comforter has some volume, so we need to solidify it. And since we solidify it, you see we fixed this normal problem up here, and if I go back into backface culling, you see it is all fixed. Alright, so to add the volume, the bulk to it, we can increase the thickness. Okay, get it to somewhere about where you would like. Somewhere, I'm thinking about there. That's a nice thick heavy duvet. Alright, now we need to fix this gap underneath. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this modifier, but before I apply that, what I should probably do is mark all these edges as a seam. It's going to make the unwrapping much easier when you go to unwrap it. We couldn't unwrap this earlier because it was, well, we could, I suppose, when it was a surface, but once you turn it to mesh, you could have unwrapped it. But the unwrap isn't going to be perfect because you have this curve in it, so you're going to have to go back to the unwrapping techniques of, you know, using UV squares add-on or oh, the name escapes me now. It'll come to me. Well, actually, follow active quads, that was it. But anyway, we've got all this marked, so we can Control E for the edge menu, mark these as a seam. So that's going to make unwrapping a lot easier later on. Alright, so we've got this solidify modifier. We've got the thickness and the bulk we like. We can apply this. Alright, so now we need to fix this gap under here, and that's just something we're going to have to do manually. So let's go into edit mode. Let's go interface select, and what we want is to select these faces around here, but we don't want it all the way around. So these happen to be selected because of the way I model things, so I'm just going to use my circle select here and deselect the ones I didn't want selected, which is all of these around here. So I'm just kind of leaving it from this curve back up. Now my blender has deselected a couple of things. I've been looking into this because I've been having this issue recently, since version 2.79 really, and I'm led to believe that it's because my graphics drivers are not quite up to date. So it's something I will look into. Just haven't had the chance yet. So I'm just going to shift select these kind of missing ones. Okay. And I'm going to use a proportional editing here, and I'm going to use connected. Okay, what connected does different from enable is if it's connected, my influence here, okay, it'll only affect the geometry within that radius along the geometry, whereas if I used enable, okay, even though I've only deselected it, it would affect the bottom ones, whereas with connected it'll only go as far along the geometry as it allows. Alright, so let me put this back to connected. Let me reset that to a smooth. And I'm just going to grab these on the Z-axis, GZ, to bring these down. Let me get a better view on this. Okay, GZ to bring these down. You see how that's pulling together. What I can do is increase this now, just to get the rest of it to lay kind of flat. Alright. So you see now I've closed up this gap. There might still be a slight gap left there, but to be honest, that's so small I'm not even going to worry about it. Right, okay. So we got that. If we wanted to, we could, you know, kind of grab these and pull them inwards and shape this how we wanted. Let's try this one. Just manually tweak the shape a little bit. Okay, let's go back into object mode, and you see that's sitting on the bed a lot nicer, a lot flatter, and a lot more the way we would expect. Right, now it's still a bit blocky here, so I'm going to add a subdivision surface, okay, where it smooths things out wonderfully, and I'm quite liking that. Okay, so I think I'm going to apply that. Let's see how the geometry looks. Yeah, we can do some limited dissolve afterwards to tidy up this geometry. Now, one thing I do want to do, well, before we get to that, I was going to talk about the piping, but before we get to that, if you want to add any extra detail in, now would be a good time to sculpt it in. So, let's do kind of like a crease here. Let's bring this brush size up. Let's kind of, ooh, way too strong. Let's bring this strength right the way down. And kind of add some detail in where we want it. So it's not looking so uniform, it's looking a bit better. This has poked through the mattress a bit, so let's build this up a bit with a bit of an inflate. Let's bring this strength down. And just gradually bring this up. Okay. So that is the duvet. Let's go to edit mode again. Right. Okay, that is the duvet. Let me just add a material to this. And just a different viewport color so we can kind of get a better idea of what's going on here. Right, that's the duvet. Now, if I wanted to add some pipe into this, what I would do, let's go into edit mode, and let me go into a vertex select mode. Okay, I want the piping to be kind of like halfway between the two edges of flat side here. I'm actually not liking this flat side, so I'm just going to try something here. So let me select both of these all the way around. Let me scale on Z. Let me turn off my proportional editing. No, it's not working the way I'd wanted it. Let's try it in individual origins. No, it's not quite working the way I wanted it. So I'm just going to leave that. That's fine. What I was going to say about the piping, you want the piping kind of like in the center or on the edge. On the edge on this would probably work better. Okay. However, let me check something. Oh, it is alright. I just wasn't seeing it. What I thought was happening here was these two edges were just one face apart, but they're actually two. Which is good, because what I was wanting was this central loop. If it was only one apart, what I would have done was put a loop cut in there, but I'm not going to. I've got this already here, which is fine. So to add the piping, we want the piping to follow this center line all the way around. Okay, so the easiest way to do that is with a curve and using a circle to bevel a curve. But this is mesh, so we need to make a duplicate of this edge loop. So I'll do that, Shift D and enter. Okay, now if I was to grab those, you see it's just that duplicate. Alright, I need to separate these off from the comforter. So Control P. No, that wasn't it. It's just a P key, isn't it? Separate by selection, P. So now that's its own object. If I go back into object mode and I select the mattress or something else, you can see I've got this curve here. If you find it hard to select the curve, just select the duvet and hide it. Okay, and you're left with this curve. Now this curve is following the duvet center line of the edge, the edge perfectly. Right, so we got this. This is still a mesh. We can see that. So we need to convert it to a curve. Alt C, make a curve from that mesh. Now if we edit it, we'll see all the curve bits and paraphernalia. Right, so I'll bring my 3D cursor over here and I'm going to add another curve, a curved circle. Okay, because we can only bevel a curve with a curve. So there's my circle. I'm going to scale this right the way down. Okay, probably need to scale it smaller afterwards. I can select my curve that I made from the mesh here. Let's come to the curve tab, and for the bevel object use the circle we made. And there you see we got this. It's way too big. Let me unhide the duvet as well. Way too big. So I can select this circle again and simply scale it till I get it to where I want it, which about there is looking good for me. Alright, okay, we can add some smooth shading to this. No, we can't because it's still a curve. So with it selected, well actually we can. With it selected, we need to change this back into a mesh. So Alt C, make that a mesh, and now if we edit it, you can see now my resolution on my circle was way too much, getting way too much geometry here. So let me Control Z back a couple of times. Right, so I've Control Z back to there. Let me come back to the circle I made and let me reduce the resolution. So let's bring this figure down. I want it more than 1. 2, that should work fine. Okay, so now if I come back to my curve and I use my object again, I can select this curve or this circle, scale it down to get what I want. Let me unhide. Pressing all the wrong keys here today. Let me unhide this. Okay, so I can select my circle, scale it down to where I want. Somewhere about there looks good. Okay, I can select my piping now. Give it some smooth shading, see how it's all going to look. That's looking. Let me add a material to this, give it a different colour, so we can see what's going on. There we go. That's all looking good. So I can convert this to, and select it first, convert it to a mesh. Okay. Now we see our resolutions not so much, we haven't got masses of geometry on it. Well, that's all looking good. So we could mark a seam all the way around and, you know, kind of splice it and do UV unwrap. Then what I would do here is I would shift select the duvet or the comforter, Control J to join them so it's all one mesh, and that's it, job done. You know, if I want to do a bit more extra sculpting or whatever, I can do so. What would I do here anyway, if I was going to? Um, let's kind of add some unevenness to it. Okay, that's probably a bit exaggerated, but you get the idea. And this is all ready to go. So that answers the two questions: how to make a comforter or duvet that drapes over the bed with a bit of volume on it. You know, this certainly looks like it's got some volume to it. It's fairly well stuffed. And how to add some piping to this, or to pillows or cushions or whatever you like. So the piping really is select where you want the piping, select that geometry, copy it, make it into a curve, and then just do a curved bevel.